Hello everyone and welcome to today's game. Today we will look at a very interesting game played in 1938. So Capablanca wasn't at his prime, so we will see if he still has that unique Capablanca touch. So let's start. Capablanca playing white starts with c4 and the game transposes into a Catalan. So this is even played today in modern times. Of course, the theory has advanced a lot, but in a simple way, there are two main ways black can play this position. He can play the closed Catalan with c6, let's say, or open with d takes c4. In the game, black will play completely differently. Still playable, but we'll see about it. My recommendation in this position is to play bishop b4 and only then play d takes c4. After a couple of moves, you can see that black can have a good pressure on the d4 square with an eventual rook d8 and c5. This is my recommendation how you can play against the Catalan. It's very effective, it's active, and at the same time it is safe. So let's return to the game. In the game, he didn't play c6 or d takes c4 or even bishop b4. He played c5. I don't like this move. It is very early to play c5 in such a position. It gives white an enduring advantage, long-term advantage. The problem with c5 is that black is opening lines when he is not completely ready yet. So that will lead to black being defensive for the rest of the game. So he should prepare more before playing c5. Anyway, Capablanca quickly opens the lines, and that's the antidote. When your opponent plays an early c5, an early freeing move, if you're playing white, you have the initiative, you have the opening advantage, so you have to open lines. So white castles and is ready. The main problem for black here is not the kingside development, but rather than it's the queenside development, especially how to develop the bishop on c8. It's gonna have some problems developing that bishop. White can pressure on the c and the d files, which are open, let's say, and create pressure that way. So if black can successfully develop the queenside, he can have an equal play. Black has to be careful. Any inaccuracy can lead him to loads of trouble, big trouble. But anyway, the game's still equal. Both sides are playing good. Here, this is a crossroad here. In the game, black played bishop e7, but here there is an alternative. Bishop d7. So not to give weakness on c6. It is a defensive way to play. It's nothing ambitious, but that's what the position requires, to play bishop d7. In the game, played bishop e7, and white took on c6, creating a weakness on the c6 pawn and the a7 pawn, and now Capablanca can target this for the rest of the game. And white starts a direct attack on the c6 pawn. Here there are a couple ways to play it. Can sacrifice the pawn in return for activity, or can defend with bishop d7. My choice here probably would be to sacrifice the c6 pawn and get counterplay. Black played here bishop b7, didn't play castles. But if he plays castles, let's see what can happen. You can see here that black gets a very dynamic and active play. He can usually retrieve the pawn and have an equal game. So this was an active way to play the position, but black didn't play it. Instead he played bishop b7, protecting the pawn. At least he should have played bishop d7, targeting the queen from d7. But anyway, rook d1. Here black should play queen c7, getting out of the rook's way. But instead played castle. Here there's e4, the move e4, which at first sight looks like it's winning a free knight, but it is not as simple as that. After e4, the line goes knight b6, and after the complications, here black will maneuver the knight to c3, attack white's queenside, with the knight being pinned to the rook on a1. White still has an advantage in this position, but Capablanca didn't like such complications. He had the c6 pawn weakness and the a7 pawn weakness, and he wanted to play against it. He didn't go into this line. He saw e4, of course, but preferred to play long-term, enduring pressure on the c6 and a7, which is an okay way to play. Queen b6, e4, not just to remove the knight from the strong point on d5. He wants to free up the d5. He can take advantage of his better position, not allow black to consolidate his position and infiltrate on the d file. Of course, here you don't take the queen and fix the pawn structure. Queen c2, rook d8, and bishop f4. Capablanca trying to get control of the dark squares of the black's position. That's why he played bishop f4, targeting this d6 square. This is an important position. If you are black, what would you play? Here there is only one move black should play to keep the balance in the position, and that is c5. The c pawn is well protected. It opens the line for the bishop on b7 and free up its game. But instead in the game played a losing move, rook a8. This is a losing move because it allows Capablanca to execute his threat of taking control of the dark squares in the center, especially on the c and d files. Bishop d6, removing the only defender of the dark squares in the center. Of course, you cannot take the bishop because if you take, there is a simple fork. Instead, black counterattacks, and after the exchanges, black takes control of the dark squares. And now the queens are off the board. We are in an endgame, and those two weak pawns are going to make a difference. And already the a7 pawn is lost. There is no way to protect the a7 pawn because any move like, let's say, rook a8, white can simply take advantage of the bank rank weakness for black and checkmate. So there is no way to protect it. Instead, black removes the checkmate threat and white takes the first pawn, and the c pawn is still weak. Here black tries to centralize his king to try to hold the position. White now brings the king to the center. Black bishop has no counterpart. White has a very important control on these squares. It restricts the black king. You can see the pawn has advanced to c5, but it is under threat. Now look at this beautiful move here. f4. Capablanca is ready to sacrifice his b3 pawn, but with a price. If he takes this pawn, can go to white takes the important diagonal h1 a8 and especially control of the a8 square, which will be the winning square. And if black tries to defend somehow that a8 square, bishop c6, and the knight goes back to d7, and the pawn queen exchanges the bishop He pushes it, but he cannot even take that b3 pawn. And now the a5 pawn moves one square. The c3 pawn is not a strong pawn. It is a weak pawn, which the king can go to, let's say, d3 and collect it. And here black resigned because the pawn is lost, and the two passed pawns going to win the game easily for white. In this game, the main mistake we can say for black was when he played rook a c8 instead of pushing c5. Pushing c5 would have freed up his game, but after rook a c8 he allowed Capablanca to take control of the dark squares, encircle the pawns on c6 and a7 and win them.